All right. Hello to everyone. We are H&D Abroad. I'm Herman.
And I'm Dee. Thank you all so much for joining us. We are really excited to talk about Spain again, but we love to give that can you afford Spain? Can you afford a country? So, literally, we're going to be talking about dollars and cents, but also about the money mindset that you might want to be prepared to have. The reality is that a lot of us are considering moving abroad because there can be a financial advantage, but just because it might be more affordable, that is really relative to the lifestyle that you want. So we're going to get into the details, get into what the options are, because I know there are several of my Exodus Summit sisters that we've been talking about our desire, our love of Spain, and what options there are to make that move. So I see our
Well, we'll start off with if you're new to our channel
yes,
and you don't know who the guy and the pretty girl are, then we are H&D Abroad. I'm Herman. This is my beautiful wife, Dee. We on our channel like to share with Black couples the option of moving abroad as a plan A.
yes,
Um,
definitely for generational wealth and to have a healthier lifestyle. Everyone that we're bringing into this space resonates with those. They've incorporated those aspects into their journey, and so we're learning as you are learning. So in that learning space, we want you to ask questions,
we are a conversation
make
space.
comments, ask each other. There's a lot of support that happens, a lot of encouragement that happens in the chat. So say hello to each other.
Mhm.
Hello, servant teacher Nikki. Hey, everybody. Hey, April. Positively Prill has joined us today.
Hey, and we'll say hello to Beijing Alpha 4. It's always good to see our friends here.
Absolutely.
We are a couple still finalizing our place to be, which makes us a lot of unique. It makes us unique to a lot of other channels where people have already decided where they are and they're talking from there. We're learning and we're learning as we go. And we do that through these conversations with you, through the conversations we have with our guests who teach us about opportunities and the specialness of the places where they live. So
get your pencils and paper ready. Look, hand me that pen over
yes,
there.
Ma'am.
Because I know that the student visa aspect of moving abroad, I wasn't quite sure. Like, I mean, you all know my background. That I have done teaching in the past. I have a graduate degree in education, but never really thought that the student visa fit into this until I started watching others. And Fatima specifically, if you're in the Exodus Summit group, she's done several posts. I knew she was the truth because of the level of detail that she shared there. And then I started watching her channel, um, Vinylwaif. So, what we want to do is to encourage you right in the comments, right in the description of this video is her channel. Go out there. If you aren't following her, please subscribe to her channel. If you want to know the practical side of could this fit, we're going to start the conversation here. But I know she would definitely appreciate having you follow what she's doing to get a little bit more insight. So I don't want to talk about her in the third person because she's right here.
And while you're in the process of subscribing to her page, if you're brand new, like this video, yes, even before we bring her on, like it, let her know you enjoying that she's coming on. You haven't even seen her yet. Subscribe to our channel and hit the notification bell so that you know every time we go live. Oh, and we go live every Saturday at 1 p.m. Central Time.
Absolutely.
So bringing on our guest today.
Hello.
Hey.
So we're going to let you introduce yourself, Fatima.
Sounds good. Thank you so much, HND, for having me on your channel. I love your channel. I'm a huge fan. My name is Fatima. I'm a writer, mostly of fiction, but also nonfiction. And currently, I am an auxiliar de conversación here in Valencia. So I'm a language assistant through the Nalcap program. I'm in my second year at the same school in the same town and everything. I just wanted to keep everything the same. And before coming to Spain, I was living in Boston. I'm from Boston, Massachusetts. And in Boston, I was living and working in tech at a software company. So, yeah, that's just a little bit about me. And I'm very happy to be here.
Absolutely. I want to say hi to Anita's World. Glad to have you here. And Can't Sit Still, Bill. Bill, we need to get in touch, man. I'm trying to reach you.
Yeah, it looks like David has joined too from
David
It's a Wonderful Life with Nikki and David.
If you missed our conversation last week with Dave and Nikki, please go back and watch that. We had a great conversation.
Yeah, we brought forward Spain in a lot of different ways. The student, not just the student visa option, but this particular program, Nalcap. There are lots of teaching assistant programs in countries around the world. Spain's is unique. So, Fatima, why don't we start the conversation with, so you've got your tech job, which probably is making decent money. You know, you can live a reasonable life here in the US. What was the thought process or circumstances that got you thinking this isn't the story that I want to continue for my life?
So at the time, I was feeling stuck in the job that I had, and that's pretty much it. You know, I was stuck and I was feeling burnt out, and I kind of wanted to just switch things up because I knew that if I continued the way that I was going, it would just not be good. And my mom said something to me that I really liked. She was like, you have to be happy and you have to be yourself and you have to celebrate yourself. So whatever you have to do to kind of get to that point, do that. And for me, that was travel. So I applied to Nalcap, forgot that I applied. I went to Turkey for a little bit. While I was in Turkey, found out that I got into Nalcap. So I said, okay, let's go to Spain. And that's really what happened. It's pretty simple.
So, okay, so it's kind of the series of questions that we ask people, because most Americans will stay in America, travel for vacation, but not consider a different life. So as you've gotten comfortable and started, you know, hey, maybe I might want to do this, how did you prepare your core folk? What did your family, how did you approach sharing this with your family?
So I waited until I had accepted and everything was signed before telling my family. That way there was no backing out.
Look what I did instead of, do you think I should do this? Okay.
I was like, I guess I'm going to Spain is really how it happened. But I also like to kind of think of myself as a responsible free spirit. So really I had been working on making sure I had enough savings and that anything that I really needed to handle, like personally, financially, just all of that in the US was taken care of before I came to Spain. So the way that it happened is I was still working my tech job when I found out that I had been accepted into the program. It just so happens that I was on vacation in Turkey at the time, but I was still working. And so once I decided I'm going to do this, I prepared myself in all the ways. And then I also let my family know, like, hey, I'm going to do this, but don't worry, I've taken care of everything else and I'm working on taking care of, you know, what I have to do. That way, when I'm there, things are kind of, the only difference is I'm in Valencia, but really everything that needs to be done here is taken care of, so there's no issues. So the conversation was pretty straightforward because really I had made my decision and it was going to happen. It was really just like when. So my family was like, okay, I guess when, and that depended on just me getting a visa, which is a pretty like lengthy process while you're still in the US. So it took sort of all summer to get the visa, and then the when really came down to once I had my visa, then it was like, okay, so here's the date that I'm actually departing. And I like this comment that I'm seeing here from Anita's World. Hi, Anita. She says responsible free spirit, and that resonates with her. I'm glad.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So, it sounds like you were okay with travel. I mean, to go to Turkey, which is beautiful and affordable, and got on my radar from some other people that I've seen in the Exodus Summit group. Where did you start? Okay, so I think I got from your channel that you always start with combing YouTube for tips and other social media. Where did you start? Because if you were finding out while you were away, that student visa process is what I see in the Reddit groups, like, oh, that's where people's nerves are, frazzled. So can you walk us through your process? Because you're supposed to be in place at your school by August, September?
October 1st.
Okay. So can you walk us through what was your process in getting, so hooray, you're accepted. Now what?
Yeah, absolutely. So I can even paint you a really nice picture if you want.
Yes.
I was in an Airbnb in Istanbul. The call to prayer is going off, and it was just a normal day. And I opened Reddit and I said, okay, where do I begin? And so I started searching how to do the student visa application. I was also looking at the Nalcap website because that really is the source of all the information. And I think it's like a gold mine because they tell you everything that you have to do. They have guides on how to apply to the visa for the visa. So I was looking there to just figure things out, like what the official process was. And then I was looking on Reddit for people's experiences. And then specifically on Reddit, what I was searching for was Boston Spanish consulate, right? So I wanted to be very specific and figure out, okay, what am I going to do once I go home? What's the process for my city? And then the third thing I did was I actually emailed the consulate in Boston, just asking them, hey, I have this job as an Ox. Where do I begin to apply for the visa? And they sent me a very helpful email that just listed all of the paperwork that I would have to submit, which was a lot, like an overwhelming amount. Like it was just too much. And I realized that most of that required me, of course, to be in Boston to do. So from there, I had to really plan my flight back to the US so that I could just be there in order to start the process. And at the same time, I was doing research on YouTube, like you mentioned, because I wanted to see what other people's experience was, like not only going through the visa process, but also just like moving to Spain. Specifically, I was looking for other Black women who had done Nalcap, ideally like younger Black women around my age. Didn't really find a lot of information, but I did find a lot of blogs by other people of other demographics. So that's kind of how I started to do my research and got into the visa process.
Wow.
Yeah. And the question I was going to ask was, were you doing the application and visa simultaneously? It sounds like you were working on them. So did you get accepted before you finished your visa, or you were working on your visa while you were in the waiting process for the information?
No. So I applied and then I was accepted. And once I accepted, I had to accept the position and say, yes, I'm going to do it. And once I confirmed with Nalcap, then I had to look up how to get a visa for Spain. So what that meant for me, because I was traveling, is I had to go back to the US. I was in Turkey on a different tourist visa. So that was, a whole other thing. But what I'm saying is I had to go back to the US and be in the US and start the process to get a visa for Spain in my passport.
Okay.
Yeah. Let's see. So for clarity, I know when we got our temporary visa for Mexico, you have to start the process. You have to go to a consulate in your home, in your country of origin. Was could you have gone to the Spanish consulate in Turkey? Or it's really what I'm understanding is you need to be in the States because you've got to do that FBI background check. You've got all of that, and it's just easier to do while you're in the States. Can you clarify?
That is correct. So the process for the visa to come to Spain through Nalcap, which is a student visa, has to be initiated in the United States. In your state, if there is a consulate in the major city or in the nearest major city that has a consulate. So I often hear of people traveling from where they live to the nearest, big city that has a consulate. The Nalcap website also has a guide where they have like a map of the US with all of the consulates that can process your application. So they make it really easy if you look at the information that they have up there.
Yeah, let's see. So, okay, so you said Nalcap, but there are a few others that we've been looking at. I mean, there's, I think maybe like 8 or 9 the programs that I've seen. So there are different kind of advantages, disadvantages there, whether that's cost or support in getting the residency visa or being able to choose the school where you go. Why did you choose Nalcap over those other teaching assistant programs?
So I actually didn't know of any other teaching assistant programs except for Nalcap. I had heard of Nalcap like a couple of years ago before the pandemic, but at the time I thought it would just be something that would be too overwhelming for me because I was like, oh, Spain, I don't speak Spanish. Like I can't do this. So I knew what Nalcap was, and that's kind of why I went with it. And it wasn't until I got to Spain and I started doing more research that I even realized that there were other things such as Conversa Spain, which is mentioned here by servant teacher Nikki. So that I just didn't know that there were others, to be honest.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, and it wasn't until, like you said, each year you have a contract, you're fulfilling that school year contract. And so if you find another program that better suits your needs, you can always pivot. Does that mean that your visa also ends at the end of the year? Can you give us any insight into, so once you qualify for the student visa, like what does that give you access to? What requirements, especially around taxes, what impact does the student visa have versus maybe if you had looked at going to Spain under a different kind of visa?
So I'm not really sure what the impact really is. I mean, I think that when you come to Spain under a student visa, the implication is that you're here to do study or internships or something related to, government, like ministry programs here in Spain that are like fall under the student visa category and the student like activities. I don't really know what the other side of that looks like coming to Spain on a different visa, just because that's not really been my experience.
Okay. No problem. Yeah, the Nalcap, there is no fee to apply.
Yeah.
There is a fee for some of the other programs that I've seen. So yeah, I mean, you have to weigh out like what the advantage is for applying to the different programs, what the hourly requirements are. So most of what I've seen is somewhere between 16 and 20-ish hours of teaching assistant responsibility per week. What did it wind up being for you?
It wound up being just about that. 16 hours a week here at my school in Valencia. I think for some people, sometimes it's a little bit longer because they have to commute further than they would like to, or just because that's kind of how it is. But the schedule is 16 hours. So for me, it's about 4 classes a day. I want to say, I can look at my schedule now to double check, but it's like that, 4 classes a day, 4 days a week. I'm done by 2 o'clock because I work at a primary school, and that's it. Some people have placements in schools that have hours all day long. So children have class in the morning and then they also have class in the afternoon. And they usually go home like, during the day and then come back or something like that. Or they have lunch at school and then they resume in the afternoon. So there are assistants. I've read about assistants who have schedules kind of like all day, a few hours, but it's all day because they have a couple of morning classes and then a couple of afternoon classes. For me, it's just because my school runs between 9 and 2, and after that, there's no classes. The schedule is pretty much 16 hours a week, and that's it.
I know one of the videos that I watched, you discussed the fact that you encourage the awareness of the geographical places, the regions in which you were applying, because the city versus the region were 2 different things.
Yeah.
And so you might end up spread out in the areas that you need to. Can you give us a little more feedback about that? I thought that hit me that hit me big, coming from larger cities like you, when somebody says you on one side of town and you got to go to the other side of town to work, that's a big deal. When my first year after college, I worked downtown. We were living in Miami at the time, and I worked downtown Miami, and I had to get up. I had to leave my home at 5:30. I took public transportation. I had to leave my house at 5:30 to be to work at 8. And literally, I would walk in the door at 8. So it was a mile to the bus stop, a bus to a bus, to the bus to the metro, to the bus to walk the rest of the way. So when you say, hey, you need to know the area you're in because you might be spread out, that impacted me big. Give us a little more about that, if you would.
Yeah, so I want to start by saying that Spain is significantly smaller than the United States. So luckily, scale-wise, it's smaller. With that said, when I was applying for Nalcap, I only chose Valencia because I had visited Valencia before. Like, I had checked it out and I liked it. And I realized that I didn't really know the other areas, the other parts of Spain. And so it's really important to do a little bit of research on Spain as far as the cities, the size of the cities, but also autonomous communities. So autonomous communities is like, there's Valencia City, but then Valencia City is part of like the Valencian community, which is like the bigger scale. It's kind of like the state. And when you are applying for Nalcap and you choose Valencia, you're applying to the community of Valencia. You're not applying to the city, which I didn't know. I thought I was applying to the city. And so it's important to just research just a little bit, just to get a sense for like the scale and the size. And when I got my placement is not in Valencia City. My placement is outside the city, right? So, and it's in a place where it's in a very small town that is close to medium-sized towns that are then close to sort of the bigger city. And so if I were to live in the city center of Valencia City, I would have a very long commute, like, a commute that is, I would say, kind of like the commutes that I used to have in Boston, and I did not like those.
Right, correct.
So, yeah.
Let's see. So hold on just a second. Dr. Linda had a really good question about, can you get accepted if you have a family?
Hi, Dr. Linda. I love Dr. Linda. Yes, you can. I don't know how it works because I applied on my own, but I have read of couples applying, and I have read of people applying and coming over with a dependent. But to be honest, I don't know the details of like how the visa would work. My understanding is that you would have to do your visa and then have a different application for whoever is coming with you.
Mhm.
Often what I see as well is that people apply in couples, for example. So the partners apply for Nalcap and they hope to be placed in the same area. I think even in the application, there's a place where you can say that you're applying
Yes.
with your friend or whoever
Yes.
it is. So they try to kind of accommodate. So the answer is yes, you can be accepted. But really, what you want to think about after that is what's the visa process going to look like for the people I'm coming over with after I'm accepted?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've follow the Smiths on TikTok and Instagram. They're a couple. I've been looking and finding other couples that are not married. People coming with children. So as they say, do your Googles. But this is a program that could accommodate, especially in the application. You need to let them know you're coming with someone.
Yeah.
This question is top of mind because we've looked at several different kinds of visas. The taxes for Spain are higher than they are for the U.S. Do you know how the taxes are? What tax implications are for the student visa for the state sponsored, this Spain sponsored program?
I don't know, to be honest, because we're in October and I've only been in this program 1 year and tax season hasn't quite like
Caught up with you.
caught up with me. And if you're aware, Valencia has late pay issues. So in the previous tax year, I didn't get paid.
That was
So
Yeah. Okay. I didn't even think
yeah.
about how that would even impact your. So I want to make sure that we get a chance to talk about the pay here. So even though we're talking about taxes, where you get accepted, you want to be or where the region. I think you get 3 opportunities to say which region you want to be in. That could impact when you're paid and how much you're paid. Would you like to talk a little bit about that?
Yes. So Madrid and Valencia, which are from what I've gathered, the regions that accept the most people, or at least like the regions that really get a lot of applicants, you have a stipend of 1,000 euros per month. In Madrid, I believe the Oxes work until the end of June, which is not the same as in Valencia. We work until the end of May. So I think Madrid region has an extra month there. And then there are other regions, I think northern regions, that actually pay less. So about 800 or so euros. I don't know exactly the number, but it's less than 1,000 essentially. So that's definitely something that I recommend people kind of just look up and look into, because that's good to know. Not all the regions pay the same. The other thing is that Valencia is notorious for not paying on time. Like, this is just how they do it, I guess. I don't know. I don't know why. And so that's also something to really think about and keep in mind, because that could obviously seriously impact like a person's time here if their Ox stipend is really all they're relying on. The program even encourages people to come with savings, because it's good to do that. But also, if you are in a region that may not be able to pay you on time and will then release your payment in a lump sum late or whatever it is, then it just helps to prepare for that. So
first, I'm going to applaud you on being prepared, even though you didn't know you needed to be. When you said that, I was like, no, that doesn't work. That was poignant.
Yeah.
We've been working a long time, So we've had the pay structure where you get paid every week. We've had the pay structure where you get paid every other week. We've had the pay structure where you get paid once a month. And regardless of those formats, you have to be prepared to budget for those challenges. Because getting paid every week and getting paid once a month are two totally different. The money hits differently, and you have to prepare for that differently.
And considering things like startup cost and
right,
right,
yeah, there's
staying in an Airbnb is a little bit more expensive while you take a look at the places. I don't want to interrupt you, Davis. No. So when you were, I don't want to. Since we're at the early part of this conversation, I want to see if you can bring forward what were some of the things that you prepared for. So the money part is kind of an obvious. You probably need to have a bit of a savings. What were some of the things that I've watched your channel and see that there were some benefits that you prepared for that you were like, I'm so glad that I did that. And then there were other things that you felt like you over prepared for that really didn't flush out. How did you make, kind of, because you can't bring your US life, your whole US life to a different country. How did you make the determinations on, invest more or make more space or time or finances here and not for others?
And contrast that with what should you have prepared for?
Yeah. So one of the things that I prepared for that I'm really glad I did was like bills. You know how you always have bills, whether you're like in the US or not, you just have things that subscriptions, things like that. So I wanted to make sure that I would not have to worry about subscriptions that I would probably use once I got to Spain, like my entertainment. So financially, I made sure that I really prepared to pay for those for an extended period without any worries. They would just go automatically, boom, done. And then I think I really tried to prepare for being here on my own and being as comfortable as possible. So as far as the things that I packed, I was really trying to make sure that I was not taking too much because I'm not very good at carrying heavy luggage, to be honest. It's not my strong suit. So I didn't want to suffer when I first arrived. So I packed very light, at least for me. And in that, I tried to really make sure that I had at least something for various seasons because I really wasn't sure what to find here. And one of the other things that I really tried to do was prepare myself to understand Spanish. I think that was one of the biggest things that I was working on throughout the summer. And even before I applied for Nalcap, I was thinking of learning Spanish anyway. So I was really trying to make sure that when I arrived, if someone says something to me, even if I don't know how to answer, I want to at least understand a little bit. So I was really working on my listening skills and my comprehension skills, which is really funny because once I got here, they were speaking in Valenciano, which is the Valencian language. And I was like,
exactly.
Well, darn. I don't know what you're saying either way. So yeah, that's that. And then I think you asked, what do I wish I had prepared for more? I think I wish I prepared for culture shock a bit more. I thought because I have a little bit of experience traveling, I think of myself as like a citizen of the world, like, right? I thought that everything would be great and that I'd be just fine. But what I realized that I didn't know Spanish culture very well at all. My intention for coming here, I wanted to get unstuck from, feeling burnt out, and I wanted a new experience. I wanted to live abroad. I wanted time, my time back to be able to work on my writing, right? To just be myself, right? And I wish I had researched Spanish culture, just how to be around Spanish people, just what it entails. I wish I had researched Spain more. I really didn't. And I got here and I was really slapped in the face with culture shock, like very hard, because I was just discovering something new every day. And at times it was just really frustrating, not really picking up on things because it was just completely culturally not something I was used to. And I wish I'd just done more research there. So
give us an example of something that culturally took you off guard. Because I think sometimes when people hear that, they're not, that could be.
That's a really broad.
Because we deal with,
Yeah.
we stumble across differences in the states from one state to the next. That there are things that you do in Boston that they don't do here in Alabama. And so what kind of things hit you the hardest? What are maybe the top two things maybe?
What hit me the hardest? One thing, well, I'm going to tell you one thing that I didn't expect. It hit me not super hard, but just didn't expect it. So as I mentioned before, my school is in a very small town, and then it's close to medium-sized towns. So what I did was I wanted a short commute, so I decided to look for a place to live in the nearest medium-sized town to my small town. Here's the thing, I'm from Boston, and I don't know what it's like to live in a small, medium-sized town. And it turns out that over here, everyone knows you, especially if you're a foreigner. And I was not expecting that at all. I was not expecting within my first week of really settling into my apartment for the entire building to know who I am. I had no idea that would be a thing. And I had no idea that everybody would know where I work and where I'm from and like who I'm renting from. And that's just by virtue of everyone knowing everyone and everyone kind of just talking. And that's the norm. So that's something that very much caught me off guard because people would say hi to me like in the building or outside, and they would know my name and I wouldn't even know who they are. And then I would see them again like 20 minutes later in the building and I'm like, oh, you're my neighbor. Like, okay.
How has that experience been as a Black woman? And why I asked that is one of the first videos that I saw, you said I was searching for videos about Black women doing this process. Now I'm sharing what I wish I had, what I had been looking for, I'm now sharing. So what has your experience been as a Black woman in Valencia?
Yeah, so my experience as a Black woman in Valencia has just been overwhelmingly positive, which I have to admit I was also not expecting because I'm from Boston, and honestly, Boston people, we're just not the friendliest. Let's just put it that way. When I say that to people,
you said it, not me. I didn't say it. You said it.
But the thing is, when I say that to people, they're like, "Oh, that's so weird because you're so nice," and I'm like, "Yeah, but." No, it's not quite the same. And so my experience has actually been very positive. I often describe the experience of integrating into my school and meeting everyone as like a big hug. You know, when you go back to see like family at Thanksgiving or Christmas or whatever it is, and everybody is just hugging and there's that warmth. That's the experience that I got at my school. And then when I met the folks who I'm renting from, they very much embraced me as one of their own, and they really like allowed me to rent an apartment where their son used to live with his wife. And in my building too, there's this warmth, and it took me a while to get used to it because I didn't know my neighbors in Boston. I don't think I've ever really known who my neighbors were, to be honest. Let's just be for real. And here, it's there's not that many of us, but I know everyone, right? And this is a place where I feel really safe, and it's like being at home almost, but in a different country. So I've had a really good experience because people are just really nice. People have just been like really, really nice to me, and I was not expecting that at all. I think I kind of maybe also wish I had prepared for that, but I don't think I would have even been able to prepare for that because I think as Black women, we're always on our guard when we travel. We just want to make sure we're safe and we're not being harassed and everything is okay, that we're just so busy thinking about that when the opposite happens and people are just like, oh my God, let's have paella at my house this Sunday, every Sunday if you want. It's just it's very shocking too, but in a good way.
Okay.
So, okay, so let's go down the Black woman rabbit hole. You're in a medium-sized city. Can you find Cantu? Can you find Black hair products? Can you get your hair if you braid your hair? What are the things that, can I get my shea butter, in my medium-sized city? Or do I need to go to Madrid because I know that that's more of a culturally diverse center? So tell us what it's like navigating the needs of a Black person, not just Black women, but as a Black person, to have your needs met. In addition, not just the physical products, but like, am I going to see another Black person within a 10-mile radius of where I am? Let's just
within a 7-day week.
yeah. What's your Black reality, your connection to what you need as a Black person in your where you are?
Yeah. So before coming, I had kind of used Google Maps to see where my placement was and everything like that. And I think this is something that I heard you say, Dee, that you do as well. I was just like looking at the map and planning distances and figuring out how long it takes to whatever. I was just doing all that research. And what I decided was I'm going to come with some Black hair care products. I know how to braid, so I'm going to probably braid my own hair. And I figured that it may take me a while to find products for me. So where I live, I can't find Cantu. It's just the reality. There's no Cantu. There's no Jamaican black castor oil. My hair is in this style that I love, and because I'm starting locks, because it's just a lot easier, a low maintenance. I don't have to do anything or really see anyone, and I can maintain it myself with very little. With that said, Valencia City, while it's not as big as Madrid, it is the third largest city here in Spain. So you can find Black hair care things and beauty supply stores in the city. I know one, so that's good. They have some things there. I went there. The guy's really nice. Like, it's okay. So there are, places that have products that can make our experience like what we know in the US, but it's not super easy to find. So that's just what it is. It's not super easy to find. And as far as just the day-to-day, so I think the other reason everyone in my building knows me is because I'm the only Black person in my building. So okay. It's just like, I'm the only Black American in the whole building. With that said, there are Moroccans in my building, Algerians, there are people of color, North Africans, and then Spanish people, and it is a mix. But as far as like someone who looks like this, it's just me. So I guess, there's that. And in my medium-sized town as well, sometimes I see some Black people, right? It's not like every day as soon as I walk out, I'll get to see some Black people, to be honest. I don't see that many. I know that a few live in this town, but I think it's just me and them kind of situation. Like it's not that many of us. And then when you go into Valencia City, because there's so many, because it's just like city center, there's a lot of students, there's a lot of families, there's Black people there for sure. Again, mostly West Africans or just like Black Africans. But if you are within the Erasmus circles or just like around students, you can find just Black American like folks as well there. So what my understanding really is that like in the pueblos, like in the smaller towns, not as many. And then the closer you get to city center area, like the more you'll find, Black stores, shops, West African restaurants, like Nigerian restaurants, things like that. Okay. So
good. Because I've not done it yet. I've done some of my lock maintenance. My hair is really long. I see Servant Teacher Nikki asking about where we can get our locks done. I might have to do a little bit more to prepare for that because I might not be able to find. In the Black in Spain group, everybody's talking about you can go to Madrid. I was like, so you might have to travel a little bit farther, but get out there, walk the streets. That's where I've been able to find a lot of things and just ask, asking around. So let's see. Yeah, this question about safety.
Now, understand that if you've watched us, you know that there is a gender split on this safety question. And this is David asking this question. So answer it as you feel it applies to you, but understand that there's if you can delve into the, I don't know how women might see safety and how men might see safety in the answer. If you can, don't feel pressured.
Yeah. Do I feel more secure in Spain than in the US? So, in a way, yes. I feel a lot more safe. I think I just don't have the same fears here or concerns here or worries here. I don't have, like, when I'm in the US, I often think about violence in the US, and that scares me. And it's just like always in the back of your head, right? And like I have brothers, for example, so I'm always scared when I think of them. Whereas like here, I find that I'm just not thinking about violence as often because no one's thinking about that. That's just not, it's just such a different way of life. And in a lot of ways, because I just feel very like fortunate to have landed at the school that I landed in, the town, the building, everything, because I really feel like I landed in like a really safe space as well, where everyone has embraced me and has been very caring and has just like helped me with everything. And so, yeah, I do feel safe. Like there are numerous people that I can genuinely call if I have an emergency here, right? First and foremost, really being the folks who I rent from, who have kind of stepped in a way and have been like almost like parents to me, right? So everything that I need, anything small or big, they're always not only encouraging me to ask, but they really help me. And then because they have friends who live here, so they're retired. And so they also have friends who are retirees in the same building who've had apartments here for a really long time. They always say, if you can't reach us, you can always come to so-and-so at door number so-and-so. And sometimes when I see them, I always not only know that I can turn to them, but they encourage me, like, if you need anything, like you can just come over and ask. And I have needed things and gone over and asked. So in that way, I do feel safer in the US. I'm just not thinking about things that I would often think about in the US because it's just so different here. And then there is this community that's really embraced me. And I think the biggest thing, though, is the mindset. The way my mindset has changed, but also how I had to really start checking myself in a way to stop certain thoughts or to kind of just like analyze certain thoughts. In the US, I think I'm on high alert pretty often because I'm just trying to figure out if someone is being racist. That's just the way it is. Whenever anything kind of happens, I'm just trying to figure out, was that? I'm always questioning that. And I really had to stop doing that here because I was like, well, here's the thing. I'm in this place, whether I'm traveling within Spain or just in my town, I'm in this space where I'm like the only Black person, really. So are they looking at me because they have some racist thought, or are they just looking at me because I'm cute? Because if I saw me in a place where I wouldn't normally see me, I would just be like, oh, she's cute. So it's like, but this is something that I had to like
without fail. every conversation of everybody we've ever interviewed who is living abroad has said the exact, almost word for word, what you have said. I had to change my mindset.
Mm-hmm.
How long did it take you? Especially, we promote community, and I think the statement you made about your people in your building, that shows that immediate community. How long did it take you when you were in a space by yourself to make that adjustment? You can make that adjustment when you're saying, okay, here are the people in my building, they're so nice to me, we get along, everything's cool.
And
but then when you're away from your home and you're walking through town, how long did it take you to readjust in that space?
It was pretty quick, I have to be honest. People in my town are also really nice.
Okay.
They're really, really nice. But so usually when I'm walking around, people say hello, say good morning. And once I learned a little bit of the Valencian greetings, I felt pretty safe just like interacting with people at any time during the day or night. Here, because there are so many festivities and holidays, everyone is out all the time, including kids. So it's just like, there's just like safety and warmth that comes with it anyway, especially in a medium-sized town. Sometimes though, when I get out of my town, because now my town and kind of the city of Valencia is like my place, so I know this culture a little bit better. So sometimes when I get out, I do a little bit like, creep back into thoughts that I would have before. And that's when I have to stop again. And so as far as how long did it take me to change my mindset when I'm not in my town, right? Because there's a difference between being in my town feeling safe and not really being here.
Right.
Maybe like, I don't know, maybe like 6-7 months, because I remember I went to visit a friend of mine who lives just, in a different place. And it was my first time there. And the first thing I noticed was like, I was the only Black person, me and her were the only two.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember going to the store, and as soon as I walked in, I had never been to that store before. So I was like looking for something very specific. And then I became aware of the security guard. And I had a thought that went, if this was in the US, I would feel very nervous that this guy was even looking at me, because I would worry that he's worried about me or checking for me or following me around. And I remember having that thought. And then I remember thinking, well, but this is not the US, so maybe he just like wants to look at me for a second. And he was, and then I didn't see him again. So I'd say maybe like 6 months of being in Spain to really have that shift in mindset and just feel more secure. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Thank you for unpacking that. We've got a couple of questions in a couple of directions. So let's hop back to Nalcap right quick about how early can you apply? You want to give us a little bit of that starter conversation. So, because I know right now you can go ahead and start doing a portion of the application even now before it opens up, right?
Yeah, so there are certain things that are part of the application that you can do pretty early. The application requires, for example, a letter of recommendation from someone, that can speak to what you're good at. So that's something that realistically you can really start and get squared away. The application does open on a specific date that they don't broadcast until closer to when that date is. So I just recommend checking the Nalcap website every once in a while. But preparing your recommendation, preparing your statement, which is it's quite short. It doesn't have to be very long, but really your statement for why you want to apply, and looking on the Nalcap website for their guide on how to navigate Profex, which is the application, which is the platform where you submit the application. Profex is very easy to use. It actually looks a little bit like old school, like when you're in it. The only confusing thing about it is that it's in Spanish. So if you don't know Spanish, like you won't know how to fill it out correctly. So that's why Nalcap has a guide that really walks you through step by step on how to submit your application. And I will also say, once you do submit your application, in that time frame, getting your background check and really looking into the apostille process, which takes a really long time depending on when you do it. Really figuring that out early on is just the best thing that you could do. That's something that I wish I had done. And yeah. And then like a couple of things like that. There's like a medical certificate that you need, but these are all things that fall into visa application. For Nalcap, it's really just filling out the application. I would say research, the regions of Spain so that you know where you're trying to be. You should know that like Andalusia in the south, where Sevilla is and all that, it's really hot. So if you're down for that, if you're down for 100+ degrees every day, be my guest.
It is. I'm going to advocate for Sevilla, where that has been a little bit of my love. It was warm even in April, but it gets into like 110, 120 in the summer.
Yeah.
And that's why a lot of people are gone. So like you said, those climate issues, access to medical care, we've talked about on the channel. If not being the only Black person, then you might want to look at what's available in the area where there's more cultural diversity, because that can impact how welcoming people, if they're used to having people that are not native to Spain, then their approach to you might be a little different. So definitely doing that research. Do you have to have your recommendation and have your statement in Spanish?
No, it's in English.
Okay. All right. Question about money.
So this was going to be my question, and Anita nailed it.
Yes.
You nailed it.
When you say 1,000 euros a month, my out of brain conversion is not good, but I know that's less than $1,000 American.
Mm-hmm.
So talk about life on a let's just say, for to round the number, on a $900 a month income budget, assuming that you had no other work.
Yeah. So the one thing that I want to start out by saying is Spain is relatively cheaper than the US. And then Valencia is, I would say, relatively cheaper than Boston and most major US cities.
Mm-hmm.
So that's one thing to consider, because it is realistic for an auxiliar to do okay. And now I'm talking one person, to do okay with that stipend, provided they find affordable housing and that they have affordable transportation to, their school, or if they work close to the school, even better. And that they try to budget a little bit so that, they can cover their expenses. I think what kind of trips up, or maybe not trips up, but what happens to a lot of other auxes, especially in cities like Madrid, is the cost of living in Madrid is a lot higher than Valencia. And so it's fairly difficult to find affordable housing as far as like something that would fall within your €1,000 a month budget. Mm-hmm. And also, and also just try to live on that stipend. So Valencia, I know people in Valencia city center who, again, one person renting one room in an apartment where other people rent rooms. They're renting for about €300, €350. That's within an auxiliar's budget, right? Mm-hmm. I know certain people who rent at 400, 450, €500. That's still about half of your aux salary. And then, of course, there are bills to consider. But for the most part, I think because some of the people who do this program kind of are out of college and are still wanting to do the roommate situation, they can usually figure that out. If that's not your vibe, which was not my vibe, if that's not your vibe, you should just save your money before you go. You should just, to the best of your ability. I mean, it's still possible to find studios that kind of are 5, 6, 700 euros. So depending on the area, I think usually closer to city center and within city center, more expensive. Once you get out, a little bit less expensive. So depending on how that is, it's all about like what you find for accommodation, how the bills are, and then from then on, you can figure out the budget a little bit better. So Anita's question is, did I save X amount of months worth of expenses, like with the cost of living was whatever, did I save according to that? No, because I'm a responsible free spirit, so I just saved as much as possible. I was like, I don't want problems. I don't want, I don't like stress. I don't like unnecessary headaches. I like to be in a situation where I'm like, good job past me for thinking of that. And now we're all that's what I like. Seriously.
Yeah.
So I was just
yeah,
putting money aside as much as I possibly could. And I was also, putting bills on auto pay as far as things that I knew that I would keep paying for, like subscriptions that I want to keep having access to for entertainment, things like that. I still have, like, for instance, like my US number is still active. I don't use it, but like I wanted to be able to still have it running. So my strategy was save a lot, as much as I possibly can. Make sure that everything that probably I still need to keep paying for that's US based is covered for at least 1-2 years. And once I get here, find the most affordable place ever, like the most affordable situation that I can possibly be in that is also comfortable for me. And that also kind of just lines up with what I'm looking for. And really what I was looking for, if I'm being really honest, and if I open my diary from this time last year, I didn't want to share a bathroom with anyone. Like, let's be for real. I didn't want roommates. I just did not, that was not what I was looking for. So, and I was also, I wanted to be close to my school because once I saw where it was, I realized that I would either have to do a very long commute or I would have to do a short commute, and short commute worked for me. So I just wanted that convenience.
And that was going to be where I was going to squeeze that in. And great segue is transportation is another cost. If you live more affordably further away, then you've added in transportation as a piece, which appears to be a better option, to live closer where you can walk and potentially pay more, or to live farther and have to pay transportation, or is it really just a matter of preference?
I think it's a matter of preference because I know certain people who prefer to live just in the city center because there's just a lot more going on and they prefer to commute further. One really cool thing about Valencia is that transportation is actually free here for people who are, I think, under 30. There is a way that you can get a card and you can just take the train and the bus for free, like as many times as you want. It's kind of a new initiative that they started here because they wanted to encourage people to drive less and take public transit more. So there's that for Valencia. In other cities, I'm not sure that that's the case. So I think it really depends on like preference and, also the placement, because if you are able to find someplace fairly close to where your school is and the price is okay, you might as well stay there instead of maybe saving 100 euros being further out, right? It's just like, I think it's a matter of preference. And I wanted to say something else, but I've lost it. So hopefully it comes back to me.
Yeah, paying attention to the exchange rate is what a lot of people may not keep in the forefront of their mind. So we're heading out of the country shortly. Just went to the bank because I've been watching, okay, this is the best time because this is the highest that the peso has been in, the lowest it's been in relationship to the US dollar. So now let me go grab my pesos. But when you're thinking about your housing cost, because it's going to be your largest expense, that housing cost isn't the constant like what we have here in the States, because it can be impacted by the exchange rate. So you're wanting to make sure you're paying attention to that. So I'm pretty sure most of us are not thinking about housing in relationship to making sure that you've got AC and other things that might also impact how your dollar, how far your euro goes.
Yeah. I mean, I was not thinking about AC actually at all. That didn't even cross my mind before coming here. And then, because I don't know, I had this impression that Valencia was warm but fine. And then summer hit and I was like, oh no, this is not fun. I was like, I didn't know what the smell of my sweat was until I came to Spain. And officially I know what it is. Because I'm from Boston. I'm like, it's like, what? It's not.
Yeah. And there's so, we take for granted that we assume are going to be a part of the, did you, and I guess that's a good way to ask that. Did you, as you were searching for housing, have you had to kind of negotiate that? Oh, this might need to have air conditioning. I know in certain places in the world, they'll tell you fully furnished means a stove and a refrigerator also. Did you?
And unfurnished could be a whole lot less than what.
Yeah, you got walls. Did you have to make those kind of negotiations in your housing?
So no, because I got very lucky, and the place so what I did was, to find housing, I got to my school, I met everyone, we all hugged, and then I said, I need help finding an apartment, and they said okay. And they said okay, and they said, don't worry, just go home. We'll text you tomorrow. And then they said, we're gonna put it in the teachers group chat. Don't worry. And I think maybe within a couple of days, someone who used to work at the school had reached out to the colleagues and said, yeah, I think we have something that might suit her. So really, the first place that I looked, the first place that I looked at is the place that I decided to rent, because it was furnished fully with furniture and a bed and washing machine and an air conditioning unit, yes, and tables and plates, everything. Their son used to live here with his family. So it just so happens that he then bought a house. And so the place was kind of just sitting and, here it is. So I didn't really have to do a lot of negotiating. Mostly I was just asking questions like, is there this, is there that? How does this work? How does that work? Very, very lucky. Like, I feel so happy at the school that I'm at, because people really supported me and I landed this apartment through them. But yeah, I know people who have to navigate that and figure that out. Like, they have to really call landlords or send them WhatsApps and then try to schedule something. And these are all things that you really want to consider and factor in, because these are interactions that have to be done in Spanish. Like, Spanish landlords don't speak English like that. Like, they just don't, you know what I mean? Especially not in Valencia. So you really have to come prepared to interact with them. And even if you have to Google Translate everything that you're trying to say, that's what I was doing. And I had a mediator. I had someone there who was speaking English and helping, which was just the person who used to live here before. He just happens to speak English. So he was really helping to translate between me and, the landlords. But I still had everything that I wanted to ask them translated on my phone, and I was reading it and I was saying, how do I do this? How do I do that? Does it have this? Where is that? How do you turn it on? How does it work? But yeah, there was a TV here when I came, so I really had to take this place. Like, I had everything, including a television. So I was like, yeah.
Yeah, and therein lies my next question. You're segueing me right on time. Right? Is do you recommend a facilitator to assist if you have language challenges?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, especially if it's something that is within your budget, and that would be fine. And if it would make your experience a little bit easier, yes, because there are people who do that professionally. There are people who just kind of help you sort out the paperwork. when you come to Spain through Nalcap, and you're looking for an apartment, one of the things that you have to do after that is you have to get something called an empadronamiento, shortened padron. That's just a certificate that says where you live and where you signed your lease and all that information. And that's really important to extend your visa once you're here. So if you can have someone facilitate that conversation with your landlord, just figuring out what the contract is going to be, then great. I had someone who made sure that I had, the contract both in English and in Spanish. I had a lot of time to review it, to really figure it out before signing, even though my heart was already set on the place and I knew that I was going to stay here. And that really helped me feel more confident, because I could always kind of turn to them if I just had too many questions, or if I didn't know if Google Translate kind of put that correctly for me and I wanted to really clarify. So I would recommend that. And there was earlier another question about these other programs that charge you a fee to do language assistant. The reason I did Nalcap was because I didn't know there were other programs, but I do know someone who came to Spain. She works in this town, she did a paid sort of program. She paid an agency to get her placement. And what they helped her with once she got here was a lot of stuff. Like the bureaucracy of taking your student visa and turning that into your little residency card that makes you legal here and says where you work and things like that. It's not impossible to navigate at all, but it's all in Spanish and it is very confusing. So if you are not someone who really can sit down and figure things out, or if you just can't be bothered to figure things out because all the web pages, it's hard, no appointments, it's a lot. Those programs, when you pay them, they usually have support in the country as well. So it's kind of like a nice little, thing that you can have. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. That was that.
No, go ahead.
No. Yeah. So the kinds of housing. So where you took the recommendation from the school, did you also look around? Because what kind of housing really is available? And I'm saying this because in the Facebook groups on Reddit, once you tackle the student visa part, then the next thing that people are in a frenzy about is housing. So what are the housing options if you're like, I'm coming with a family, or there's no way I'm grown. I don't share spaces.
I don't want to be in the party zone in the college.
And I'm at least a decade past roommate.
Where the apartment complex our son lives in is not the apartment complex I would live in.
So what are the realities, whether that's a villa or what kind of options are available? Do you see?
So what I have seen in WhatsApp groups that I'm in is actually expats who have houses that they're either selling or renting in general to other expats or to other people. So my understanding is that there are housing options for more than one person, like families, things like that. And then of course there are apartments, and depending on the area, you can find house either to buy or to rent. There are agencies that really help to facilitate that. I don't have much experience really looking around for other housing, but I have seen people in, just like WhatsApp groups that I'm in, of where folks talk about, we're just renovating our house and we're putting up for rent here, for sale here. They're online and it's out there. That's all I can really say, because I haven't really looked for that otherwise.
Yeah, outside of the US, the process literally is either someone, you're in the Facebook groups, or you're in you're on WhatsApp. You're going to have to navigate that differently, or you're going to pay somebody that, so it's different, but doable. Do you want help? Do you need, are you giving yourself enough time to be on the ground? And I think that's the lesson that I have taken back is I probably, not just that I've taken back, but that you've offered. Give yourself enough time. Come early so that you don't feel that pressure of I've got to do all of this and school starts next week.
Yeah.
So, yeah, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say the reality is that a lot of people want to come early but can't because the visa process took so long. My first year, I actually came late. I think I was about 3 weeks late or so just because I didn't have my visa. And that's very normal. And that's why in my videos, I advise that you do things like the apostille and the background check as soon as you apply, because probably you'll get a placement and you want to just do what you can early to kind of maximize your chances of arriving early, or at least a little bit earlier so you can figure things out. It is, of course, doable if you arrive like late or if you arrive 1 week before everything. It's just a lot more rushed because I think sometimes we kind of forget the obvious, which is really that moving abroad is a lot. Like you're literally taking your body from what you know to this other place that maybe you visited before, but you never lived there really. So it's just like such a big change that you really have to account for how that's going to impact you physically, mentally, on top of everything else that you have to get done. So
I love that you said on your channel, assume you will be accepted.
Yeah.
And from that mindset, don't plan to be on vacation when you know that that you might get accepted. So if you apply, there's a good chance because more opportunities are available that you might, and that the two things that you suggested take the longest. I don't want to miss the money conversation around, I'm buying milk. I'm buying, toilet paper. I'm going out to eat. What do the practical everyday costs look like for living in Spain? From the kinds of products that you bought in Boston versus the kinds of products that you buy where you are now.
So what I'm seeing is that in Valencia, overall, everything is just a lot less. With that said, it's still in euros. So once you do the currency exchange, it's less, but it could add up. And sometimes it's just not less. So it really depends. Groceries, milk, things like that, because I'm kind of only buying for wine, and it's like everything is also smaller here, which I wasn't used to, because in the US, like when I go buy milk, the milk is always like massive. And here it's just like this little, and I'm like, well, that's going to be finished in 2 days. So everything is on a smaller scale, and I find myself going shopping a lot more often too. But 140, 150 euros for like a bottle of milk about this big. I like to shop at the fruit place, the fruit and vegetables place, which is where farmers kind of can sell their own products. So usually there it's a little bit cheaper than the grocery store, and it's just fresher, right? So I like to shop there for like smaller things. But in general, what I like to do is really look at the prices of the different grocery stores and look at the receipts. So I like to save all of my receipts and see. And I have found that certain stores are just more affordable than others, as in like I can get more things on my grocery list for like, for example, 40 euros at one store than I could get at a different store. If I can get like 25, 30 items for 40 euros in one place called Lidl, for example, but only 20 items at Mercadona, which is a Spanish, store here, I'm going to shop more at Lidl just because you can have, a lot more. So the day-to-day, that's kind of what the day-to-day looks like. I think initially I was really just trying to figure out where I could find the things that I eat pretty often for the best price at its freshest too. Going out to eat and just kind of stuff like that. again, still, it just feels like a lot more doable here. Just a lot more affordable, because I know when I was in Boston, going out to eat for two people, you may, depends on where you go, of course, but if you really want a nice experience, you're looking at spending $100, $200. That's never been the case here. I think I've been out to eat with 2, 3 people, and the most we've paid for either sharing, what are they called again?
Tapas.
Yeah, that either sharing tapas or just each of us having our own thing. I think our bills always come out to about, I don't know, 35, 40 euros, drinks included. And I think that's significantly lower. So
Yeah.
it's like nice. Like it's not as much.
Yeah. And they don't rush you. Like we
Yeah.
sit there for hours just talking, and the wait staff isn't there saying, I got to turn this table over. So the relaxed part. So so I have the siesta question that I ask everyone that's been to Spain. So what was your adjustment to siesta?
My adjustment to siesta was so weird because I would get sleepy at siesta time and I would fight the nap for some reason. And I was like, why am I fighting this nap? I'm tired. So that was my adjustment. Like 6 months of me needing to take a nap because everybody else is taking a nap, or just everything is closed or quiet, and just really fighting that and going, no, I'm gonna do something else. And I've really adjusted that and slowed down a lot in my day. But sometimes I also take advantage of the siesta time, especially for just getting things done. So it depends. During that time, bars and things like that are closed, but usually grocery stores are open. And usually there's not as many people there, or there's just no one there because everyone's, taking a break from work. The kids are home from school. They're all having lunch. And I find that it's a really good time to go grocery shopping at a very relaxed pace. Because usually folks go early in the morning because then during the day it's too hot, or after work. That's when the stores are really packed. But if you go to the store at like 2:30, 3 p.m., it's a ghost town. And that's how I like it. So so I've adjusted by kind of taking advantage of the times when it's not as busy, so I can really relax and find my time and, not feel rushed, and also just like not be in huge crowds, things like that. So both working it into my schedule and also just taking advantage of it to get things done.
Yeah, good question, servant teacher Nikki, about the siesta. Do the kids go home for their break and then come back? But it's my understanding siesta is somewhere, it's like 2 to 6 p.m. So how does siesta factor into the school day and, your experience as a teaching assistant?
So my school is a primary school, so we actually don't have that built in because everything is over by 2 o'clock at my school, at least classes wise. And then after 2, there are meetings and things that administrative things that have to get done. So for me, the way that it works is by that time, I'm already home, or I'm already on my way home, because I'm done with class. All the children are done with class. In other schools, usually what happens, or at least from what I've read, is that, the kids go home for lunch, and some people also go home for lunch, and then they come back to finish the rest of the day. Some children stay at the school because there's lunch options available for them to just eat. They usually eat and, play around in the parks and the playground, and then they kind of they have their break and then they resume. So that's kind of how it works. But at my school, because we only go up to 6th grade, we don't have that. The hours are pretty much over by 2, and that's that.
Do they start earlier, or do they just have shorter hours?
No, we start at 9.
Start later. Okay.
Yeah.
Because when we were there, I was like, it's 11 o'clock at night and these kids are out of the park. Don't they have to go to school in the morning? That was something that we struggle with it. Part of the reason we homeschooled for a while is
Mhm.
because that getting up to fight them, to get out, to get through rush hour traffic, and then we're in Sevilla, and I was like, oh yeah, it's adult time, and it's kids out in the park, like it's
Because they don't
literally
have to be at school until 9. They can live a regular life. The cultural values just, I mean, we were only there a week, so I just getting deeper into that, a culture that recognizes rest, breaks, family time, all of that. Anita's asking a very practical question that we had to navigate just for this broadcast. So, how are you adjusting to the time difference?
Pretty well, I think. When I got here, I just had the usual jet lag, but because I have some experience traveling, I had some experience figuring out how to not be jet lagged super long. So, and that basically is just staying awake. Like once you arrive, just stay awake and then go to bed when they go to bed. So I did that the first couple of days, really tried to stay disciplined and make myself, not nap because I was tired. So I adjusted pretty quickly. And then connecting with people and family, I have like weekly calls with my family that are a must. So that's without fail. I always kind of stay in touch with my family pretty much every week. I try to really talk to my brothers all the time, right? No matter whether it's texting or just everything. But I think the biggest thing that I do is when I really want to connect with someone, I actually tell them what time works for me in their time zone. So I do the work for people and I say, oh, how about like at this time? And I'm telling them in Eastern Standard or whichever time zone they're in, because I really want to make that effort to stay in touch with people. And I don't even want anyone to try to convert the time because sometimes we're 6 hours ahead, depending, sometimes it's 5 hours. So that's kind of how I've adjusted, but it's a lot of work. It's very difficult because when you move abroad, your life goes on abroad, and other people who live in the US, well, their life is still going on in the US. So they have their own thing that they're doing. And so if there isn't like that mutual effort to really try to stay in touch, it can be very difficult, which is the reality.
in relationship to that, and this is probably my last question because I know it's late, but you are, is new travelers, especially and I'm guessing that your age group, 20-ish, 30-ish age group, new travelers, that they often deal with homesickness, even in the country. And so you're talking about going on the other side of the world. How, if at all, did you deal with homesickness? How do you and suggest homesickness is dealt with for those who are new to this kind of travel and an extensive level of being away from their homeland and families?
Yeah. So what I did I convinced myself that I was going to be fluent in Spanish in 6 months. So I was just like talking to everyone, like trying to be fluent. So I kind of just threw myself into the culture, and that helped me feel more comfortable here and not feel as homesick. I think the other thing that really helped is when I got here, I got this metaphorical hug from everyone. So I didn't really get homesick because I was like, oh, like I just left my house and I'm home again. And that really helped me adjust so much. Of course, there are moments where I was like, oh, I kind of miss, the way I was doing things in the US or just being around my family in the US. That's normal. But it was a combination of really committing to the language and really committing to understanding the culture, really committing to like connecting with the locals to the point where they just know you because like you guys, they just know me. And also trying to stay in touch as to the best of my ability with, those I hold dear back home. So that's kind of how I adjusted. I think for the most part, it was pretty easy. Yeah, I think I've just been like spoiled here in a lot of ways by the people, by just like the culture, the place where I work, my neighbors. It's these little things that really help a place feel more like home, even if you just got there. So yeah.
Yeah, what I'm hearing is your life is evolving intentionally. Like you've put some pieces together. So there's a little bit of luck, a lot of planning, definitely mental flexibility because you are changing. There are things that are expected and a lot that's unexpected, and not unexpected negative. Like this is a process. You can always say, I can go back to my country of origin. What I want to say is that you have stepped up in a way that you could just hold these experiences and keep them to yourself, but you have taken the microphone.
With some hot topics.
It's some hot topics. So I'm bringing this prop up, y'all, because if you get to Fatima's channel, you will see the hot sauce, hot topic that I am referencing. There's joy here. There's real joy. And I'm so glad to support by inviting those of our community of channel watchers to yours, because I'm stalking, because y'all know Spain is on my list. Thank you, Fatima, so much for spending time with us today. Thank you to our audience. We've said hello to a lot of people. Other people like Sabangale have jumped into the chat as well. Anita's World. You all, thank you so much for your questions. Many blessings on your journey, Fatima. This is the warm hug that I needed about Spain. So y'all get out there, get you some siesta, get on the road, get in these scouting trips, experience the world. But what do we say? The first thing you've got to do to be able to do anything we've talked about today, get your passport. That's right. Keep it current, have it ready, because opportunities like the student visa with Nalcap and other auxiliary programs are out there around the world. We are going to talk to someone else in November that's doing this process in Japan. So I'm so excited. Thanks everybody for the great questions.
Hit the description, hit her description page, go subscribe to her now.
Yes.
Thank you so much for spending time with us. Hold on with us just a minute before you go. To everybody, you know where to find us. Same place, same D channel. We're always here.
See y'all next Saturday.
See y'all next week.